Good morning, my friends, YouTube enthusiasts, and fellow gamers. Welcome to my ranting moment of earning just after getting up and getting my first cup of coffee. It's breakfast with a fat man. I ran a posed a quandary to a group of people on DM only chat room forum called Interparty Treachery and the backstabbing play. As a GM, some 40 years of experience, I've seen this numerous times. I think most of us have seen it, probably either encouraged it or discouraged the concept, depending on your particular style and belief and the friends or associates that you have that play in your group. Uh, at some point, you always get these interior, I don't want to call it in-game politics that exists too. That's kind of different. What I'm looking at here is when you get one player who or two players who decide to muck around with their fellow players or their fellow player characters. That traditional rogue who just can't keep his fingers out of everybody's pockets, or the bard who likes to charm his companions into doing things he wants. The wizard who's constantly testing new theories, new cantrips and stuff on one other person in the group who, for whatever his reason. Mostly, I'm sure it's just for humor to mess with that person's particular psyche. The less than tolerant dwarf or barbarian who always becomes the brunt of the jokes. And as long as it's good natured and the players are all involved with it and they're okay with it, that's not usually a problem. But and it can blow up into things, especially if it crosses over from the player characters per se to the actual players. And I've also seen some very good groups dissolve because of these sort of things over time, or I've seen a couple of campaigns devolve into something less than what we really wanted it to be, because it becomes all about how can I get one up on the other guy or get even for this other person. The On the other hand of that, I have also had some pretty creative and colorful play in games when players have involved in these so-called hijinks, if you will, and are mature enough to handle playing it out, role playing it out. There's the key as far as I'm concerned. Is your group mature enough to role play this stuff out? Because if they are, well, then there's a lot of potential for humor in sidebar situations that can enliven the game session and sometimes even affect the outcomes of particular events in the sessions or the campaign in general. I think in at least one situation that comes to mind where this paladin had this holy MacGuffin that was the key to this underground catacomb tomb thing, a situation that the players had gone into to retrieve an artifact for a local clergy, and the place was swarming with undead under the control of an undead, higher level undead boss, if you will. And while the party were capable and equipped, they weren't invincible, and they were in not quite dire straits, but they were in a desperate need to get back out of this place. While after they had acquired the particular MacGuffin they weren't looking for, and when they came back to the entrance to get out, the paladin couldn't find the key. And it turned out that one of the other members of the party had light fingers and had borrowed it for what was it, philosophical study or something to that effect, if I remember. The argument was uh, that he believed that there were other clues or something on the inscriptions of the particular key that would have led to a bigger treasure, and was determined to find it. And then when it came up to owning up to having it, he refused to acknowledge he had it. And as the GM, of course, I knew he had it, and I Well, what do? I did not go and say, Jesus, Joe, come on, give the damn key up, server, and get out of here. No, I had him play it out. And it ended up costing most of the party their characters. I think, including the particular individual who had fingered the item from his buddy's pouch. The paladin character was not amused, to say the least. The player was actually really upset about it. He felt that he had been played, if you will, and he didn't like being played as what he felt as being the chump of the group. It was his fault. Almost everybody got whacked because he couldn't get the door open because somebody took the item and nobody would own up to it. I don't recall whether or not anybody actually, the group ever did determine who it was that took the item. They did kind of point fingers at me and were annoyed that I wouldn't, rat on the other player. As a GM, that's my choice. I told him, I said, I'm the referee here. I'm the moderator, if you will, the storyteller. But I'll be, I'm not going to, know, uh, take sides. So if one of you guys attempt to do something and you do it under the table on the sly, and that's what we pass notes for, or get up and leave the room to have alternative conversations occasionally, or even have email conversations between groups about planning something that one individual wants to do that the others may or may not be aware of. That's just part of the game. And fortunately, our group at that time did not become totally dysfunctional over it, but it did cause a number of others to step up their game, if you will, and attempt more uh, under the table sort of behaviors, not necessarily against their particular fellow players, but always with the group uh, welfare in mind. So, I mean, it has its moments. It's good and bad depending on how you look at it. Uh, so, what do you think about that? What would you do in your group as a GM, as the game master, when the party wants to start poking and prodding or lifting each other's items or messing with stuff, outright thieving from their fellow players? And what do you do? Do you allow them to play it out? Do you discourage that behavior? Um, I don't think there's a good solid answer for any one particular person. I think each situation is individual. Um, like I said, there's a lot of ups to it and a lot of downs to it. Don't recommend that going around and going out of your way to do this sort of thing. Although on the, I can acknowledge that I have on let's say 2 or 3 different occasions over the years run campaigns with evil based mindsets. That's where everybody's playing in an evil based alignment, and their motivations and the selfish motivations and stuff is expected. The backstabbing and the chicanery and uh, behind the scenes politicking, if you will, is expected. And if you're one of these players who just can't play that way, can't play like the atypical politician, if you will, or the stereotypical drow, whatever, then perhaps you shouldn't be playing in that kind of a campaign in the first place. You also have to be mature enough to be able to handle the negative side effects of this sort of behavior. If you're going to get easily upset or hurt, your feelings are going to get hurt. Once again, maybe you're just better bow out and not play this. As a GM, if you're thinking of running that kind of campaign, you got to be careful too, because if you're not used to playing it, this is just not how your style is. You can find yourself bogging down and becoming very blah or boring. A lot of times it's difficult to run the wheels within wheels kind of stuff that goes on in those kind of game environments. And it's just something to keep in mind. So, like I said, when we're talking about interparty treachery, do we involve ourselves in it? Don't we? That's your individual choice, as I said. I do believe, though, that you should be prepared for that scenario when it does eventually happen. If it hasn't happened, it will Give it time. You will get some new player who will come in and he wants to play this character class or this type of person or this alignment, and then starts doing things just seemingly to annoy the other people, and perhaps just because he or she's bored, and they want to get some strange yuck out of it. And sometimes those players don't tend to last long, especially if you got a group of more serious players and they just don't want to go that route. They want to play it. Then you have to make that decision. Sorry, friend. Maybe if we have you in a different group, I'll try Jim's group over here. He's more suited for that kind of thing. It's the same thing with the min max mentality. You got a group of players who are more into the puzzle solving and long term view of things, uh, and you get somebody comes in who just wants to play the maxed out monster masher, and that's all they want to do. It doesn't melt well, so you end up having to make some decisions. So, well, keep in mind that interparty interparty treachery and backstabbing has moments, has a lot more disadvantages than advantages. I think has some opportunities for some creative play. Just keep that in mind, and you have a good day, my friends.